What is shaking? Got a single shot today, and it is Wednesday, and there's an opportunity to call these single shot grading sessions something like One Shot Wednesday, or let's call it right now. It's One Shot Wednesday. What is happening? It is One Shot Wednesday. Today we've got an interesting shot of a woman in front of a window. This is pretty cool because it presents a unique challenge in that basically she's going to be kind of backlit. So how can we make this shot pop, make her look like she's got some life with a very bright window behind her? So let's get this into rec. Today we are going to be using the JP2499 DRT. If we take a look at the scopes, we've got a pretty decent exposure range. It looks like everything was recorded very safely. We can see that she is relatively low in the exposure range. So if we take a selection here, this is most likely not what the DP was looking at on the day. But in our case, this is what we're looking at as a starting point. So she's keyed very low. Looks like around 38 to 40. All right, so I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna start introducing a little bit of contrast into this and doing a little bit of adjustment in the exposure just to get this a little bit brighter overall. So that's already feeling a little bit better. Let's address the sky first. I'm going to switch over to the log and pull up the highs there because that's only going to affect the top quarter of our image. And that's going to get that window exposed so it feels more like daylight without really affecting our talent. This is a pretty good place to start here. The window feels a little bit more natural, real. It feels more bright. I think we can move on now to getting our talent looking a little bit better. Switch out of the log, back to the primaries, and I think what we're going to do is the density is a little bit high. I usually start at 3. Let's cut that in half. We still want that print density in our image here, but it's a little bit too high at 3. And when you have a backlit subject, that density really affects the lower values. So all the stuff that you don't really want to be dark becomes dark due to the nature of adding density. Let's get a circle, inverted circle rather, and switch to the offset, bring this down globally. Just drop the sides down just a little bit. And that's already going to call more attention to our talent. That might be a little bit high. And let's take a smidge out of the bottom as well. There we go. This also looks like it was shot with an enormous amount of diffusion on the front of the lens, which is actually pretty cool. But the byproduct is it's compressing everything down a little bit further than it normally would, which in this case is probably smart because you're shooting out a window. And if I didn't want to have to fight with highlights and trying to save details later, good job, whoever shot this. Let's keep going here. I think what we can do is by brightening these values and these hues, I think what we can do is cheat a little contrast into her by doing that. And we're going to do that with a global brightness adjustment. There we go. You see how that kind of snaps into place there? And I think I want to call more attention to this blue sweater. Get that cyan going there. Speaking of sweaters, it's starting to get a little chilly out there. And I'm not a fan of cold weather. All right, so already this is looking much better. And I think we can just do a couple more things. Let's do a little bit of a face refinement. Switch over here to our open effects, detect faces, bang. Yeah, it's getting a little cold out there, I gotta say. I don't know if I'm ready for it. I feel like it just kind of went from like summer to cold. The dogs love it though, I can tell you that much. I had a lady tell me last year that she saw my dogs in the backyard and said, I wouldn't leave those dogs out in the cold like that. You shouldn't do that to animals. And I was just like, look, I can't get them in. The problem is I can't get them in. I'm not leaving them out there. They don't want to come in. So, but you know, glad like people like her exist, right? Got the face tracked, and I think we're gonna do a little bit of an highlight here. Nothing crazy, a little bit of eye removal. That's gonna soften up the cheeks, get that kind of dewy look to the cheeks. And let's brighten those eyes just a little bit. Maybe do a little sharpening. That'll put some contrast back in there. Yeah, that looks good. That looks good. So that was before, after, before, after. It's almost as if you had like an extra light on set. I mean, as colors for kind of like the digital gaffers, right? DPs get all the credit in the world, even though gaffers kind of did everything. In terms of like the lights, at least in my experience, I always said like, hey, I want something big and soft here I want some highlights pulled out on the background with some harder light or, you know, something like that. And they would just go and do it. And then, you know, people would tell me how great everything looked. And I always pointed to them and said, like, all I did was hit record. These guys did everything. So in that same nature, we do this in the color suite where we reshape or refine the lighting that was used on set. Same kind of thing. All right, I still want to pull her up a little bit. If I can at least get her key up to like low 50s, I'll feel a little bit better. There we go. Just touching on that low 50s. All right, let's take a look at our skin. The skin looks good. I'm liking that. Let's drop our background and temperature just a little bit. Before, after, before, after. Very small change, but... And let's add just a touch more contrast to this. Yeah, that looks really good. All right, cool. That is it for, well, I think that's it. Is that it? I think that's our first installation of One Shot Wednesday. I think I want to do some more of these. I think I like just kind of working and talking about whatever. That's going to do it for me for this one. Thanks for swinging by, and I'll see you in the next one.